Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Songwriting Simplified with me, Jonny Lipsham, here at jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk. I hope everybody is having a fantastic week and is making some headway with their Christmas Songwriting Challenge songs. I hope you're doing well and all of that good stuff. I have just got back within the last 10 minutes from my daughter's Christmas concert with the National Youth Choir of Scotland, accompanied by a concert band, concert orchestra. It was a fantastic evening and some great performances by everybody. Yeah, as I say, we just literally arrived 10 minutes ago, and I thought I was not going to make it in time to start the show. So I literally walked in the door, threw dinner down my throat, and parked a cup of tea down beside me. So that's how rushed I am. So if you'll forgive the somewhat scrappy start, I'd appreciate it. Anyway, welcome everybody. And for once, as I can see here, Billy was not the first in the door. Actually, not for once. He has relinquished his first in the door status maybe 2 or 3 times recently. But Sean Adam was first in the door, and then Billy came in about 5 minutes later, and then we had just Bob, and we've got Chris Manrakner is here as well, and we've got John Hawke, Steve Wilson, we've got Kyle Traduziak, we've got Burlap Studio. Hello, my friend, long time no see. I'm glad you're here. And we got Don Oliver here as well. Ron Figura is here. Gardner99 is also here, which is cool. And Bobby Booth is here. Ron Figura has a question, which is awesome. Billy Morgan says, show started a smudge hot. Actually, I've not changed any of the levels, so it should be exactly the same as last show, which was on Sunday. I've literally not touched any levels, so cannot really be possible. That may be on your end. Bell Studio says, flooded with cyber deals and stuff still. Yeah, that's going to carry on. And then, of course, once that comes to an end, you'll start getting the Christmas deals, if they're not already in circulation. I'm pretty sure there's a fair few Christmas deals that are in circulation. Let's see. I think that's it. I think we've got a small crowd tonight, which is fine. I don't mind. Burlap Studio says, been a while since I've been able to join you all. Yes, but we're very glad that you're here. That's great, because you were around in the early days, so I'm glad you're here. Let's see, Jonah's here. Jonah is one of our forum moderators, and he's one of the moderators in the Persona Studio One group, and he's an all-round great guy. One of my buddies. So I'm glad you're here, Jonah. Welcome. This is the songwriting show that I took over from Johnny Gibe. He and I were doing it together as a collaborative effort for about 4 or 5 years. And then Johnny's life just got really basically too busy for him to be able to do it. So I do it mostly on my own, and I do bring in some special guests as well. So I've had Rich Cresswell on here talking about composing and using virtual orchestras to do your composing work and composing for video games and that kind of thing, because that's what he does for a living. So it's always good to have him involved. But he has also sponsored 2 of our songwriting challenges, the Halloween one that we did in October, and the ongoing one for the Christmas Songwriting Challenge as well. He has sponsored that very kindly, very generously, and it's been a delight working with him. But I also have plans already for 2024 for both Sunday Night Live and Songwriting Simplified on Wednesdays and Sundays respectively, to involve more guests. So I'm going to be spending the first part of January basically gathering those people together. I've already got in mind some folks that I want to invite on and to deal with some specialist subjects so that basically these shows become a little bit more subject orientated. There will still be, of course, lots of space for your questions, because that's what the heart of these two shows is all about. So Songwriting Simplified is primarily questions on songwriting, composing, arranging, music theory and all the stuff that goes with that. And then Sunday Night Live is more to do with recording, mixing, mastering, and Studio One issues. That's basically it. That's what those two shows are all about. So Sunday Night Live has been running for 7 years nearly, and we are well past 300 shows on that show, and we're heading towards 350 shows, which is amazing. It looks like we have a small crowd here tonight, but that's okay. I don't mind that. But we do have a question, which is from Ron Figueroa, and hopefully that will kick off some more questions. So if you've got more questions to do with songwriting, so maybe you've stumbled across something whilst you're doing the Christmas Songwriting Challenge, and you've got a question on that, get that in the chat. Remember to start the question with @Jonny Lipsham Studios, so it highlights my name in red. It doesn't highlight it in red for you guys, but it does for me, and that enables me to very easily and very quickly see your question. Songwriting challenge, or arranging, or composing if you're doing instrumental work, orchestration, we'll talk about that, harmony, we'll talk about that, chords, we'll talk about that, music theory stuff like key changing and key signatures and all stuff like that. If you've got questions to do with that, get them in the chat, and I will do my best to answer as many as I can in the hour that we have for this show. So let's go and check out Ron's question, because it's quite a broad one, and that's okay. I don't mind broad questions. He says, best file management practices when creating songs, especially for collaborators. Yeah, that's a great question. And especially when it concerns collaborators, whether you're using Studio One Plus or you're collaborating with folks in a different way, maybe using Dropbox or WeTransfer or some other file management, file transferring service. It's really important, especially if you're sending a session file to somebody. So if you're sending, you're working with somebody else who is also using Studio One, so you're in Studio One Plus, or you're working with somebody that has Studio One Artist, for example, or they have a perpetual license, they're not interested in the subscription, then there are a couple of very essential things you need to do. Number one, and this is the most important, if you are using external files in the creation of the song, for example, you've got some loop-loft loops on an external drive, and you're bringing those into the song, and you're just dragging, dropping, and your song is starting to sound fantastic, but you're ready to get your guitar player friend to work on it, so you're ready to start getting this session set up as a collaboration in Studio One Plus, or you're going to send them the session file through Dropbox. Here's the really, really important thing. And that is, you do the following. Let's go to Studio One. And I'll put me in the corner. You need to go to the pool, which is this little guy at the bottom here. And you will see all of your files, all of your audio files, and you'll see these sounds as well. These .soundx and .sound files, these are the sounds that you are using inside Presence or Mai-Tai or Mojito or some other virtual MIDI instrument, okay? And these are the ones that are native to Studio One. So you might see something else if you're using a third-party library, but these are all audio files. So if I was going to send this to somebody, you need to right-click in here and go copy external files. So when you click on that, for me at the moment, this dialog box comes up because there are no external files, because I've already done this. But if I hadn't, then a dialog box would come up and say, are you sure you want to copy these external files? And you just click yes, don't even think about it. Don't think for a nanosecond. Don't think for half a nanosecond. Just click yes. And then once you've done that, go to File, Save. Okay? And then if you're working in a collaboration, then if you're a regular user of Studio One Plus and you're using workspaces regularly, you know what to do. Ron, I know you know what to do. And I have covered how to do this on previous shows and also in my standalone video as well on the collaboration features. So check those out on this channel after this show if you want to see those. But in the meantime, if you then say you're working with somebody that isn't in Studio One Plus because, you know, they don't like subscription models, and that, you know, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. If there are people out there that don't like subscription models, they'd rather own the license, that's just absolutely 100% fine. I have no issues with that at all. Or they're using another version of Studio One like Studio One Artist, so, you know, they can't engage with the collaborative features. Okay, so if that's the case, then you can go back to File, and then you can go to Convert to, and then you can zip the file, and then once you've done that, you can send that via Dropbox or WeTransfer or some other service that does file sending. And they may have a file size limit, so this is why I'm recommending you zip it. And then you zip it, and then you send it. Simple as that. And then all they have to do is open it up. And then they can just drag and drop it onto Studio One, and it will open up the song. Job done. In fact, they don't even have to unzip it. They can just drag the zip file directly onto the Studio One start page. Boom. It will open. Now, the reason why I talk about the copying external files is that is so that you avoid the recipient of your file, your zip file, when they open it up in Studio One, they don't get any missing files errors. Okay, so that's big step number one. So important, and so many people get this one wrong. So it's really important you make sure you do that. Issue number two. If you have plugins or virtual instruments in your song that you know the person on the other end does not have those, render those tracks. Okay? So if they're audio files, it's pretty easy. You locate your audio file and you right click the track here and you go transform to rendered audio. When you click that, it prints the whole thing. Okay? It prints the whole thing, the whole kit and caboodle. And when you do that, then it doesn't matter because the other person is not going to have a different missing error, and this time it's missing devices. Missing devices does not mean external peripheral devices like keyboards or any other MIDI device. When it's when it says missing devices, it means plugins or virtual instruments. That's what it's referring to, okay? So, providing you print stuff, the recipient's not going to have a problem. And that instrument will generate sound, or that track will generate sound, because it will be basically a WAV file. If it's a virtual instrument, you're printing that, and it just becomes a WAV file. All right, so let's take, for example, let's say this upright bass sound. Let's just say the person, I mean, this is presence, but let's just say this was something else, like UJam's virtual bassist. Then you can just right-click this one, and you can transform to audio track. Once it's transformed to audio track, you can do the render business, and then you can send that off. So you can zip the file up, and you can send it. They'll open it, and it'll open as a WAV file, and it's fine. They won't be able to edit any of the MIDI, but hopefully they won't need to edit any of the MIDI, because at the stage that you're sending it off to somebody else, all they need is playback for the parts that they are going to do. They only need playback. So that is what I recommend. So whether you're using Studio One Plus, or whether you're using Dropbox or WeTransfer or some other system, I recommend First of all, make sure you copy those external files. Make sure you render anything that is a virtual instrument that you know the recipient doesn't have, or a plugin that the recipient doesn't have. That way they don't get errors all over the place, okay? And they get inactive plugins and it doesn't sound the same as how you have it in Studio One at your end. So if you want to avoid that problem, print stuff, okay? Print tracks, render, transform MIDI tracks, instrument tracks to audio before you send it. And that just avoids a lot of headaches, whereby your other friend then contacts you and says, well, I set this evening aside to be able to work on this song, and I can't because there's missing files errors, or there's missing instruments, or there's missing plugins. I can't do anything with this. And then you have to then catch up with that, and then you have to do what I've just said, and then you have to send it again. That's just wasting time. And then maybe the friend that you're working with goes, well, that was my one night in the week set aside, and it's wasted. They're going to be a bit pissed off, probably. And then you're going to have to wait until they're available again to be able to do what it is they're going to do in your song. So it's really important that you do these things first to make it easy on them. And then, you know, working with these people is just a cinch after that point. Okay, so the unique aspect of using the collaborative tools and workspaces in Studio One Plus is that pretty much you can send and receive files pretty much straight away. You know, you get a notification up top here. These are not relevant. Let me see if I can find. So there's a song folder that I could join if I wanted to. I'm just trying to see if I can find some files that have been sent to me that are ready to receive. Because I know I did have, I may have I already, yeah, I've probably already downloaded those. I'm going back way into summertime. Yeah, it looks pretty much like I had already received those files. But what you'll find is if you're working on a song that is synced between you and the people in the workspace, you'll get an update in this notifications area, and it will say something like, I mean, in this case, it's a comment. But you will also, if there are files to be received, then you'll get a receive button appear next to that notification. And then you can just click on that, and those new files will be received into, it doesn't just randomly drop them in any old song, it drops them into the song that is synced. Okay? So if you are working on, I mean, in this case, this is Silent Night, the traditional carol, my own arrangement of it that I did with my quintet years ago. So if I was doing this in Studio One Plus with my trumpet player and my saxophone player, and they were sending me their trumpet parts or their saxophone parts, I would have that receive notification, and I could just click on that button, and their files would appear. They would get downloaded, and they would appear in this song, because the song is not only on my local computer, it is also in the workspace on the Persona server somewhere. Okay? And so that's how it works when you're working in a collaboration situation. And this is part of what people don't necessarily understand, is that when you're working, you can send files, but you can also receive. And you can do this also from, I think it's the file menu here, collaboration. And then these are grayed out just now because this is not a collaboration song. But if it was, and let's say I do a piano solo here, and then I need to send that back, then I just hit send. And likewise, if there are files to receive, I can hit receive those files. The song will be updated here. The song will be updated in the workspace. They can receive the files at their end that I have sent. That's how it works. That's how it's designed to work. Okay, so I hope that helps. Okay, I hope that helps resolve that for you, Ron, because it is a little bit of a, you know, getting the mice to kind of run round the wheel in your brain just a little bit faster. I know I have that. That's been my experience whilst I've been learning this as well, because I've been learning this I've had a little bit of a head start because, you know, I work for Personas, so I have a little bit of a head start. But it doesn't mean that I know everything that there is to know about how the collaboration works. I don't. There's still things that I still need to unpick and unravel. But that's basically the bare bones basics of it all. So I hope that helps. Let's see if we have something else on that. Okay, Jonah has a songwriting question, although he did not put the at Jonny Lipsham. Come on, Jonah. You No, this is I'm teasing you, Jonah. You're cool. Because I think this is your first time here, so you're cool. I'll let you off this once. And he said, what's the easiest way you recommend, right? Migrating from one key to another. Pivot chord. Pivot chord is the term to use here. And you can either just use one pivot chord, which would be a chord 5 going into the 1 of the new key, or you can do a 2 before it and then a 5 in the new key. Okay, so let's make this nice and simple. We'll start in C major and we'll go to F major. So here we are, C major. Nearly ran out of keyboard there. Oh, back that way so I don't bump into it. So here we are in C major. I'm just doing a 2-5-1 in C major here, which is not going anywhere because I'm already in C major, but I don't want to stay in C major. I want to go to F major. If I keep doing this all day, I'm not going to go anywhere. So what do I need to do? I need to do 2-5-1 in F. So if F is 1, then G is going to be 2. That's going to be a minor chord. 5 is going to be C7, dominant chord. And now we're in the key of F major. How about the key of E flat? Well, I need F minor 7, B flat 7, E flat. How do I get back to C major? 2-5-1 in C. D minor, G7, C. And that's how you do it. There's a short way, and this is the way that Handel used to do it, and that's basically just using a chord 5. Mussorgsky, actually, the Russian composer, used to do this as well, kind of inspired by him. And he'd just pivot off into a random key. So let's say we're in C major, we're going to go into the key of E major. This is where you just use 5 into 1. So 5 in E is B, so I want a B7. That's just a semitone below C. 1, 2, 3. Okay, not bad. Let's go to F major. E flat major. D flat major. And back to C. 2, 3, G7, C. Okay. Where next? Let's go to A major. So we want an E7 for this. And you can do the same with minor keys. This is not just exclusive to major keys. So let's go to C sharp minor. See, that's kind of a little bit weaker, just doing a pivot chord 5 into chord 1 for a minor key, even a related one like C sharp minor. The best way, really, is to do a minor 2-5-1. This is a little bit more tricky, so let's go back to C. So let's say we want to go to G minor. Now, we need a chord 2, which is not A minor in the key of G minor. It's A half diminished. That basically means a minor chord with a flattened fifth, which sounds like this. So let's do that A minor. There's A minor. Let's take the 5, flatten it to an E flat. Kind of sounds very, very dark. And then we want a D7. Now we're in G minor. So the 5 works, but we need to have that half diminished chord in front of it. The minor 7 flat 5. Okay, C minor. D minor. And because I like major keys, let's go back to C major. And that is how you do it. That's how you get from one key to another one. Once you have it in your head, it's basically a formula. 2, 5, 1. So D minor, G7, C in the key of C major. All right? Key of C minor. D minor 7 with that flattened 5. G7 to C minor. Okay? So those are the 2 formulas. Once you've got them in your head, try them in a couple of keys. Once you've got them working in a couple of keys, go through all 12 major keys, all 12 minor keys, so that you know how to do them in any key. So that you can go from one key to any other key, be it major or minor, with no problems whatsoever. You can just do it just like I did. I was just plucking keys out of the air, totally at random. I wasn't really thinking about what key I was going to. I didn't prepare any of that. That was just, I've been doing that for long enough that I know how to get from one key to another, from one key to any key, however remote or however distant. I could have gone from C major to E flat minor without an issue. And that's a bit more of a dressed up way to do it there, where you're just using a little bit of chromatic harmony, a little bit of voice leading to spice up your chord changes and actually make the key change a little bit more subtle. Okay? So there is a meetup in 1.5 hours from now. So that is going to be what, 8 p.m. Central? 8 p.m. Central. So that's going to be is it 9? I thought it was, it's 9 Eastern. So okay, 9 Eastern, so that would be 8 Central. That's going to be 2 a.m. for me. Good thing I'm still on PTO. But yes, it is a good thing I'm still on PTO, because it means I'll at least be able to get to that for at least a little while. All right, so Jonah, I hope that helps you, buddy. And it's actually really a really nice, simple piece of music theory, and it's music theory in practice, which is really what this show's all about. This show is all about putting, things that are kind of complicated, bits of music theory that kind of sound cerebral, and making them really practical that you can then take away and go and use in your own songs. That's basically the premise of this whole show. There we go. Let's see. Chris Mrackner has a mixing question, which is really for the Sunday night show rather than the Wednesday show. But he says, picture this, a band playing, a saxophone playing in front of the band. How do I make this happen like described? Kyle has given some really good advice here. He says, pan the sax full center and use the least amount of reverb. Yes. Maybe bump the level up a dB or two. Yes, absolutely. And then give the other instruments in the band a little bit more reverb. Yep, that's another great point. The reason why that's a great point, reverb pushes things backwards. It just does. The more space you give something, the further away it's going to sound from being up front. If you want something that's to sound really, really, really up front, make it bone dry. Okay? Now, that might not be the sound that you want to go for. You might want to go for something that's maybe just got a smidge of either reverb or you can use a little bit of delay. You can use a little bit of a ping-ponging delay. But here's the thing you've got to do with that ping-ponging delay is when you are using the send amount, make sure that you're only sending a wee bit. So turn it up so that you can hear the delay, then back it off until you can no longer hear it, but you can feel it. So you feel that saxophone still has a little bit of ambience, but it's not like you can hear the delays going ding, 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 ding. You don't want that. You want the delay to be there, but not there. You want it to be felt rather than heard. And so I do this for vocals, actually. I never use reverb on my vocals, pretty much ever. I use a delay. In fact, I might even use a couple of delays. I'll use a slapback delay, which gives you that instant kind of, kind of 1950s skiffle kind of sound, where you have, or, early rockabilly kind of sound, where you have that slapback delay. Except I'll make it, again, quite subtle, quite buried, but it's there. And that's to give the vocal a little bit of extra thickness. And then I will have maybe a dotted eighth note ping pong delay, which again, like I said, is nice and tucked, nice and buried, so that you feel it rather than hear it. And then everything else that I want to be further behind it, I will apply some reverb. That's step one. Step two is a little bit of sidechain compression. And so how does that work? Well, you remember the show we did, I think it might have even been Sunday's show, where I set up a sidechain showing you how to duck a bass sound, so that every time the kick drum hit, the bass sound would turn down and then it'd come back up when the kick is not playing. Well, you can do that, except this will be more subtle than that. So instead of having that pumping effect, which is what you want in EDM, you don't want that in this scenario that you're talking about. So you would make it much more subtle. So the amount that it is turning down, instead of it being 20 dB, like is what I did in that demonstration the other night, is you just have it just to tap down everything else by a couple of dB. Maybe 2, maybe 3 dB at the most. And then, so what happens there is every time the saxophone plays, your rest of your band, they will be tapped down by the compressor by a couple of dBs. And then when the saxophone's not playing, they'll be at full volume. And the secret to this is you make it so that it doesn't sound like the band is being turned down. So if when you're listening on playback, it sounds like the band is being turned down too much, then you need to adjust the amount of compression that's going on so that it's not doing that. And so you will adjust the threshold so that you make sure that the amount of gain reduction is only a couple of dB at the most. And then you can adjust the release time so you can make sure the band comes up nice and quickly and also in time with the music, so that you avoid a pumping kind of situation, which is what you want in EDM, but it's not what you want in any other style of music. So those two things, the things that Kyle said there, and some sidechain compression, or You can do some volume riding, some automation. That's the other thing you can do. Or you can do a mixture of all three. Carve out some EQ space so that the saxophone is up front. Use some less reverb on the upfront sounds and more on the background sounds. And then some sidechain compression. And then, the other thing I just mentioned, which has instantly escaped my memory, that's got to be a new thing for me. I have never done that before. I'm so sorry, guys. That's embarrassing. But yes, so either make it dry or give it delay or give it less reverb, sidechain compression, or some volume riding, or all three of those in combination. And that will get you the saxophone to sound nice and up front and everything else to sound a little bit further behind. And certainly, more compression on the upfront sound, less compression on everything that's further behind may also help. I mix a lot of jazz. Jazz is my specialty, not just for playing, but also for mixing. And so that's one of the things I do when I'm, for example, a few years ago, I mixed a record for a quartet, and it was tenor saxophone with piano, bass, and drums, right? And so I needed the saxophone to be in front of everything else. But I didn't want it to be too up front. So now in jazz, I don't want to use too much compression. I want to do some particularly on the saxophone, because saxophone is a very dynamic instrument. I mean, it's loud to start with because it's designed to be loud, but it also has a big dynamic range, especially when the soloist is really going for it and really putting a lot of air through the instrument and really blowing hard. I want to make sure that blowing hard isn't too loud, but also the quiet whispers are not too quiet compared to everything else. So yes, I will use some compression to fix that, to basically limit the dynamic range a little bit, enough so that I've got some control over the overall volume of the instrument. And then everything else will have varying amounts of compression as well to control their dynamic ranges. And then it's a case of automation as well. So, every time the sax is playing, everything gets tapped down a little bit and then comes back up again. I might automate it that way, or I will automate the sax up when it's playing, drop it back down again when it's not so up front. So yes, automation. Just Bob says drop the band down 2B and raise the sax, center in the channel up 1 to a dB, all through automation, and then it's to taste. Yes, that's exactly it. Kyle has put in the link to the Personas Pennsylvania meetup, which is at 2 a.m. UK time. Ron said, would EQing the reverb help? Yes, I always recommend EQing the reverb. Always. It's an essential thing to do, and I'm going to show you what I mean by that as well. So we're going to go back over to Studio One for this. Here is my reverb channel. Here is my reverb. After the reverb, I have a Pro EQ. What's that doing? It's just doing a high and low pass filter. Why am I doing that? It's because I don't want there to be any low end or too much high end in the reverb. Why? Because it builds up. I'm already doing a little bit of high pass filtering on other instruments, but let's just say that there are some instruments where I don't want a high pass filter because I don't think it needs it, but I'm sending that to the reverb in full. So when it's going to the reverb, it's going to bring its low end information into the reverb. And if I have lots of instruments doing that, then the low end is going to build up in that reverb channel. I don't want that because that's going to create some low end build up and some mud that I don't want. So this is one very, very cool, very critical, in my opinion, trick to do. Now, you can either do this before the reverb or after the reverb. It's up to you which way round you want to do it. The kind of more Abbey Road way of doing it is to EQ into the reverb. So you do this before the audio hits the reverb, so that the audio is cleared out before it goes into the reverb. Or you can do it afterwards. Personally, for me, I don't think it matters too terribly much which way round you do it, which is why I tend to do it after, because I've just done it that way for years. But I don't think it matters too terribly much. Like I said, it's more traditional to do it before than after. But up to you, whichever way you prefer. But I think this is an essential thing to do. Now, you got to be careful. As with high-pass filtering or low-pass filtering on anything else in your mix, you got to be careful not to do it too much. If you do it too much, everything can sound too thin. Even your reverbs can sound too thin. And when you have your reverbs sounding too thin, they lose some of their effect and you don't tend to hear them so much. And then you start turning up the reverb channel, which you don't want to do, because then your reverb starts to get louder than everything else. And that throws everything totally out of whack and everything sounds really, really distant. And then you're wondering why everything sounds so far away. That's why, because you've cranked up the volume on the reverb channel. You don't want to do that. So that's why I recommend you do this, but do this carefully. Actually run some audio through your reverb channel first and listen, and then use your ears to decide where you need these high and low pass filters to be. In this case, I've got it at 195, just before 200 hertz, and I've got this one at about 3.5K. But really, where these are depends upon what you're wanting to clear out. Now, in some cases, you may not want this at all. You actually may not want a low pass filter. You may want like a little bit of a boost up here. Why? Because you might want a little bit of shimmer on the reverb. A little bit of that really, really high upper extended frequencies shimmer on your reverb. But as I say, if you've got a lot of reverb channels and you're doing a little boost like that across all of those reverb channels, that's going to build up. You might not want that, because your mix might end up starting to sound a little too brittle up top. So got to be careful. It's all about balance. It's just like cooking. Everything is about balance. And, I say that with a great deal of authority, but I know absolutely nothing about cooking, because I'm actually a very serious and present danger in the kitchen. People's lives are at risk whenever I'm in the kitchen, so don't ever hire me. So yes, that would certainly help, Ron. Let's see. Let's go back over here. Just Bob says, if I'm in 4/4 for the main musical piece, what odd time signatures would accompany or complement when playing bass? Well, that's an interesting one, because you're talking, I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming that you are talking about polymeters, where everybody else is in 4/4, but one element isn't. Is that what you're talking about? Or are you talking about one section being in 4/4 and then another section being in a different odd time signature, like 5/4, 9/8, 11/8, 14/8, or whatever? Or my least favorite time signature, 14/16. Actually 15/16 is horrific, because basically it's like 4/4, except you just drop a 16th note, and it's really hard to keep going. But I have had to play in 15/16 before, so if you're in 4/4 and you're playing bass, you really need to be playing in 4/4 for the most part, unless you have another section of music that is in a different time signature. Like maybe you have, your verses are in 4/4, but your chorus is in 5/4. You can do that, absolutely, but everybody's got to be in that same time signature, especially for most popular music genres. There are some exceptions. Maybe you're into, really progressive music, and really experimental music where you are playing with polymeters, where you've got, you know, your rhythm guitars are in 4/4 and your bass is playing in 3/4 and your drummer is playing in 7/8, and your lead vocal is in 11/8 or something like that, or 11/7 or 11/16. And so you've got all these different time signatures going on. That can create polyrhythms, some of which will work and some of which may not work. And they'll all have their resolution where everybody's on the one at different points. So you'll have like strong beats falling adjacently to weak beats, and weak beats falling adjacently to strong beats, or maybe even a strong beat falling on somebody else's weak beat, and so on. So it can be a little bit messy, but with a little bit of mathematics and a little bit of careful calculation, you can make it work. So, case in point, there is a song, a Billy Cobham song, I think it's off of the Stratus album. I could be wrong about that, but I think it is. And basically everybody in the band is playing in 7/8 apart from Billy. Billy is playing in 4. And he's not just playing in 4/4, he is playing the straightest rock beat possible in 4/4. It is 4 to the floor on the kick drum, 8th notes on the hi-hat, snare drum on 2 and 4. It is proper bunt, but, bunt, but, bunt, but. But everybody else is playing in 7/8, so they are losing an 8th note in his 4/4 bar. And everybody basically, if you play those two time signatures together, this is what happens. Here's the 4/4 with this hand, here's the 7/8 with this hand. So basically it goes like this. Then it comes back, then it goes out again, then it comes back, then it goes out again, and then it comes back. And you can calculate with a little bit of math, you can calculate exactly when beat 1 of the 7/8 measure and beat 1 of the 4/4 measure will land at the same time. And you can emphasize that with a chord or a crash cymbal or something. And then you go away again, and then you come back and you go boom, and then you go away again, and then you come back, boom. So you can kind of emphasize those things. And it's really good fun to do. I have played that tune, both as a drummer and as a bass player. And if you're not used to it, it can be a little bit of a mind trip at first, because when you are away from the drums and your 1 is not where his 1 is, it can feel very, very weird and a little bit unsettling until you get used to it. And then you both land on the 1 again, and it's really satisfying when that part happens. That's a great question. If that's what you're referring to, I love playing polymetric music like that. But if you're not, then I'm kind of not sure what you're referring to there, Bob. Let's see. 12/8 works seamlessly with 4/4. It kind of does, but kind of doesn't. Here's why it does. Because you have basically 3 8th note per quarter note. So if you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That kind of does work. So, for example, you can count, and I've done this, there are blues ballads out there where it is either in 6/8 or it's in 12/8, but you can count it off in 4. 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a. And in fact, the drums basically is 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a. So it feels like a nice little triplet thing. Except technically, if you were playing it strictly in 12/8, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Not the same thing, but it certainly can feel like that. Okay, Bob is talking about polymeters, so he's talking about mathematic rock. Yeah, trying to understand it. Yeah, Dillinger Escape Plan is math rock. Yes, it is. Yeah, totally. I'm aware of that, and I'm aware of some of the things that they do. And actually, a lot of that mathematical rock is actually inspired by minimalist classical composers like Steve Reich or Philip Glass, where a lot of their music is built out of mathematical metric units. And they don't refer to bars in their music necessarily. Sometimes they do, but some of their pieces, they don't refer to bars. They refer to metric units. So they'll have one part that is like, okay, your metric unit is 7/8, and you're going to repeat that 9 times. Then this other part, your metric unit is 6/8, and you're going to repeat that 11 times. And then when you've finished repeating that 11 times, you go to 4/4. When you've finished repeating your 7/8 unit 9 times, then you're going to go to 3/4. And you'll repeat that 5 times. You'll repeat your 4/4 7 times, and then you'll go back to your first metric unit. And there's really, really cool pieces by Philip Glass that do that. And they are minimalist pieces. So the two parts, they have 2 different tones. So they have one particular note for their first metric unit, and they're a different tone for their second metric unit, a different note. And so you get these nice little polyrhythms going with these different time signatures happening at the same time, and different amounts of repeats happening at different times. And so you end up with notes that basically they go together harmonically. So you get like thirds, and then maybe you get fourths in harmony between these 2 notes. And that's the piece. Basically, it's like 2 metric units repeated a certain amount of time, 2 other metric units repeated a certain amount of time, and the 2 parts are apparently independent of each other. But no, they're not, because Philip Glass has done the math, and he knows exactly when these parts are going to intersect each other and cross over each other. So it's all kind of deliberate and planned and carefully calculated. But it's great music. I love Philip Glass's music for that reason. And Steve Reich has a piece for hand clapping, which I think is like 6 parts. And again, everybody has a different cell, a different metric unit that they repeat a certain amount of time. And you get these wonderful clapping cross rhythms. And it sounds glorious. It really does sound amazing. It's fantastic. There you go. King Crimson are the kings, pun intended, of polymetric playing. Yes, they are. Most definitely. I have heard that before. All right, so we are at 1 minute past the hour. So we are done. We have a 1 hour break between now and the Pennsylvania meetup. I don't know if Billy is going to do an after show for that hour break or not. If he is, then we could all kind of hang out over there. Or alternatively, I can open up my Discord and we can all pile into Discord if you would like. Discord is not necessarily everybody's cup of tea, but I find it useful. There you go. Billy says, I'll launch my Zoom until 8 when meetup starts if anyone wants to hang for an hour before then. All right, folks. So that is what we will do. We will scoot over to Billy's Hangout, and then it'll be the Pennsylvania meetup at 2 a.m. UK. That is going to be 8 p.m. Central, I believe. 8 p.m. Central, and then I think it's 9 p.m. Eastern, I think. So I think that's what we'll do. All right, guys. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming. You guys rock. You guys are awesome. I appreciate you guys immeasurably. Thank you very much for the great questions. And I will see you guys all on Sunday for Sunday Night Live. We are fast approaching the deadline for the Christmas Songwriting Challenge. If you want to be involved, please let me know. Drop me an email. Rich Cresswell would ordinarily be here. He's not here tonight, but we would basically need to hook you up with him and his workspace that he has created especially for this challenge. So yes, I will reach out to him and I'll get you hooked up if you are not already hooked up with it. The deadline is the 17th, folks. So we've got 10 days left. Okay, so you'll need to get those in on the 17th, and then on the 20th, which is going to be Songwriting Simplified. I think it is Songwriting Simplified on the 20th. Let me just check. Yes, it is. So the deadline is not this coming Sunday Night Live, but the one after on the 17th. And then the winner will be announced on the Wednesday the 20th, and Rich will be my guest on the show for that, just like he was for the Halloween Songwriting Challenge. So if you guys are up for that, please do let me or Rich know. It would be very cool to have you involved. Until then, folks, I'm going to bid you all a very good night. Good night.